Why is Robin Summeretto the best unit in the game? Well, let's take a look at the top tier teams in the game before her release, and here's what it looks like now in 4.5. Yeah, she is everywhere, and she will probably be pretty good in some Remembrance teams too. There are so many teams that she can be played in, I could not calculate all of them. And this is due to how flexible and powerful her buffs are. She has this vibe sting that stacks up to 50 times, and based on the number of stacks gives you defense reduction up to 40%, and from here, if you have more attack than Robin, she gives you a crazy amount of attack, otherwise she gives you crit damage. And this is to the entire team as long as you stack vibes for her. She also gives some vulnerability based on the number of birds present, but it's super easy to max this out instantly, and it's pretty much 16% vulnerability for the entire battle. Just these buffs alone would already make Robin very meta, but her ultimate also comes with 100% action advance, 1 skill point, and 20% energy regeneration. A lot of the recent teams are quite energy hungry, so naturally this is super useful right now. And of course, her member sprites also deal decent damage. They get a free damage boost based on the vibes and 50% crit rate, just like Cyrene. I can't find the words to properly describe how stupidly strong this kit is. She is able to provide massive buffs for every type of team in the game. Has energy regen, is skill point positive, gives action advance, and still does great damage as a support. Which is probably why she is a huge upgrade for a lot of teams, or at worst, a side grade. Objectively, I think there are only 3 things I can criticize about the kit. You cannot choose between the attack and crit damage buff because it just depends on how much attack you have. Some teams have way too much attack, like Aglaea, Phainon, Saber, and it would actually be better for them if they could gain the crit damage buff instead. She doesn't have energy overflow. I find this a bit awkward at times because you need to use her ultimate right after a character's turn ideally, but the issue is that sometimes you regenerate her energy way before that can happen, and this means you have to waste some energy in order to speed tune the team properly, so I don't really like that. So giving her a little bit of energy overflow would have completely fixed this issue and actually improve her performance in teams. She's also quite tough to play sustainers because she also gains vibes from healing or shielding, and she is very much balanced around that idea. So in teams with Phainon or sustainers and XR, the starting rotation can be very tough. But these downsides aren't too bad, and overall she is a must pull in my opinion. And I don't think I've ever said that about a character before this entire time I've been making Star Rail videos. There are just so many teams that she can be played in. I think the value for her account will always be pretty good, so let's just go over a few. Back in my Gilgamesh video I said a unit with team-wide buffs, action advance, and energy regen would be good, and it is. It's a 20,000 DPAV increase, or about 20% for the Gilgamesh and Saber team. Like I said, I think this team gets too much attack, especially with Huo, so if Robin gave crit damage instead, the improvement could actually be greater, but it's overall still a decent upgrade and is the best in slot for this team. A lot of people were wondering about Remembrance too, and I thought it wouldn't be that big of an upgrade over Cyrene, but she completely mocks Cyrene in Mono Remembrance. It's like a 50% increase. This surprised me so much that I even went and redid my previous calculations just to make sure it's correct. But yeah, Robin is just that strong for Remembrance, especially with her S1. Even Evernight Hypercarry outperforms the old Mono Remembrance team. I think this is because Robin has very little ramp up time. She just goes instantly at the start of the battle. And her S1 is also really good for High Scene. I'll get to that later, but it allows High Scene to heal even more, which means even more charges for Casteris. Also, the crit damage buff can be applied to Evernight, which means she then gives a larger crit damage buff to the rest of the team, which kinda mitigates Cyrene's buff for Evernight. The only thing Cyrene has over Robin, I think, is the bounce damage buff for Casteris. It is also easier to play Cyrene teams if you have Casteris because you can overcap on the charges, whereas on the Robin team you obviously cannot. And you also have to choose between action advancing Evernight or Casteris at times in the Robin team. So maybe for the casual player, the upgrade would not be this big, but if you know what you're doing, don't think I would ever use Cyrene again unless you have Eidolons in that. I checked against my previous calculations and it does seem that Cyrene requires E2 to overtake E0 S1 Robin. So if the stage, on average, has 3+ enemies at any given time, you just use Robin 99% of the time. If you have Eidolon Evernight, then it's even worse for Cyrene. There really isn't any point in trying to run Cyrene in that team anymore. Robin benefits a lot from fast attacks because she gains vibes from teammates attacking, so I thought Ashveil Mortenax would be good, and they actually benefited the most from Robin. A 50% increase when they already had over 100,000 DPV. It does so much damage. I could brute force Sam at 4 to 5 cost when the boss has fire rest, when Mortenax prefers AoE scenarios, and I'm using a sustain. It's just that ridiculous. Surprisingly, for Himeko Nova, it was only slightly better at 5%. I think she already gets too much attack, so I was even using a damage boost orb when previously attack orb was best in slot, and even then it's still not that great. This is the only side grade I've calculated so far. Phainon also benefits a lot as a replacement for RMC, another 50% increase, but his base damage was just kinda low to begin with, so he is slightly more competitive now, but not quite top tier level with Ashblade, Himeko Nova, or Gilgamesh and Saber. Aglaea is usually played hyper carry as well, so the team-wide buffs don't benefit her that much, and she also gets way too much attack like Phainon and Himeko Nova, so even though the extra energy and permanent uptime on buffs are really good for her, it doesn't quite push her to a top tier level, but she is quite a bit more competitive now. And that's mostly what I've calculated for teams, but I think Summer Aventurine, Sustainers Firefly, Jingliu, Blade, Facial, the Herta, even Evanesia, Silverwolf, Sparksy, and Yaoquan could all be pretty good as well. For the Elation teams, other than Aventurine, it probably will not be very good for long though, but Robin should still be best in slot for teams like Jingliu and Blade. It's just that they kinda suck, so I didn't calculate them. Other teams I also considered were NXR and Triple DOT, but you have to play Sustainless, which doesn't work very well, but should be best in slot if you can get it to work. So the builds I used for these teams were usually HP or crit damage, speed or HP, HP or wind damage, and energy regen rope. The only one I think is fixed and non-negotiable in my opinion is the energy regeneration rate rope, because it can give you more action advances, and I usually lean towards speed boots if you have S1. From here, it can be a bit complicated and nuanced, but I'm pretty much Xinfonia at this point, so the rest of the main sets performed somewhat similarly, and it depends heavily on your team and setup. I checked in 3 different teams, follow-up with Ashveil Mortenax, Evernight Hypercarry, and the new Mono Remembrance team. Usually, HP Body and HP Orb performed better, but this is because I am running speed boots. If you are running HP boots instead, then HP will become worse. In second place, it would be crit damage body and HP orb, and this is actually the best in slot for the Mono Remembrance team, but not for Evernight and the follow-up team. Somehow my calculation is right on the line of diminishing returns again, so if for example you don't have her signature light cone, which gives 30% HP, and you are running speed boots, so you don't have HP then again, HP percent main stats for the body and the orb should become even stronger. For Relic Sets, World Remaking Deliverer is the best in slot if you can hit the breakpoints because it activates instantly, otherwise you can also run 2+2 speed or some mix of that. The 2P sets are where it depends on your team and setup. If you don't have S1, Sprightly can be useful at times if you find it hard to hit certain breakpoints or just want a ton of extra speed, like in a team with Cyrene and Hyacinth for example. Amphorius is really good because he provides more healing and rest spell. If both of those don't really do anything for your team and you just want more damage, then you can run Lushaka, Penacony, Fleet, or even Broken Kill for more damage. I used Lushaka for Ashveil and Penacony for Saber for example, since I didn't really need the other planers. So just be sure to adjust accordingly to your team's needs. I've talked about S1 a ton already, and it's because it gives 30% HP and action advance at the start of battle, and 20% team-wide speed buff for 2 turns. This may sound really bad, but it's because Robin usually will not take more than 2 turns. Once she enters the fever state, which is 12 vibes, she just doesn't take a turn again if you play like a human being, which means the 20% speed buff becomes permanent. So naturally, this is insanely strong for speed tuning or speed scaling units like Hyacinth. So what you can do with this light cone is what I did actually, is that I would run HP or attack boots instead of speed boots, and this would save you 1 main stat worth of damage. Hence, the value from this light cone is very dependent on whether you are speed tuning properly or if the team can make good use of the extra speed, which is why here in a team with Ashveil and Mortenax, it doesn't seem very strong, but it can be way better in Remembrance for example with Hyacinth, or maybe even Summer Aventurine later on. So this calculation here is more of a general average perspective on the light cone. I do still think it's very useful though, maybe just kinda bad for a team like Phainon because you don't use the speed at all. So for speed tuning, I generally recommend 2 types of breakpoints, 4 bird turns or 5 bird turns per cycle. It's way too complicated to recommend a general, consistently working breakpoint for the first cycle because it depends on your team and how you play it. So the 5 bird turns breakpoint is only really doable with her S1 because it gives you 20% speed. That would be 166 plus speed or around 158 if you are running Amphorius. For 4 turns, I recommend 136 or 129 if you have E1. Basically, what I'm doing is I'm playing around the zone durations, because every 72 action value, Robin loses half of her vibes. So with E1, you get extra true damage on the bird's turns, so you want that to be the very last turn, which is why I recommend 139 speed there. But if you don't have E1, because what it does is it gives the summer bird a turn right after the zone, which will help you stack vibes faster if your DPS takes a turn after the second zone duration. So going more into detail, E1 is kinda like Cypher's entire mechanic, except it's on the summer bird's turns instead of the ultimate. It keeps a tally of 100% non-true damage and then deals 11% plus the vibes times 0.01% true damage, and then it clears 50% of it like Hyacinth's healing. The best part of this is that it deals the true damage to the highest HP enemy. So this is very similar to E1 3B, and no doubt will be one of the best Eidolons in the game because of the faster clear speed that cannot really be shown mathematically here. So I do think E1 is better than S1 because it helps you redirect your damage. E2 is 18% rest pen, and Robin can now stack vibes to 70, and each turn gives 2 extra stacks if the action were to give vibes to Robin, meaning you just start stacking vibes like crazy. This also increases the defense ignore, attack, and crit damage buff that she can give, which is why it performs so well. E4 gives her 12 vibes when Fever starts, and the birds now gain speed based on your current vibes. This is really hard to calculate and messes with all your speed tuning, and all it really does is give you 1 extra turn per cycle from the birds. So I don't think it's really good unless you somehow get an extra ultimate from that last turn. This is pretty rare and doesn't happen in my Ashveil Mortenax rotation, so in general it shouldn't be very strong. Finally, E6 makes the birds deal double damage for fun, and she can now store 2 ultimates and gains 1 for free when Fever starts. This is one of the few issues I highlighted earlier, the energy overflow. It's kinda sad it's locked behind E6, but yeah, this can be very strong if you know what you're doing. And that's pretty much all of it. There is one last thing with Summer Adventuring that I've yet to calculate, and I'll be showing that next time. And I'll also be teaching a bit more on how to play Summer Robin teams in a showcase video soon. But for now, thanks for watching.